But it seems like the players are already down in the feature match area, and if they're not, we're just going to wait. But we're going to go ahead and cut down there. I want to talk a little bit about Joshua Waddell. That's the big man on your left with the champion shirt on. Him and his crew showed up this morning early, like 10:30. We got here right before they did, and this tournament doesn't start till noon. But they were nice to talk to. We had a nice little chat talking about decks, talking about formats, and then I asked Josh, I'm like, "What are you playing today?" He goes, "Mill." Like, come on, man. I gotta stop doing that. It's fine.
It's a cool deck. I like the Founding of the Third Path tech. I hope we get to see it. I think I see one on the. Is that an Archmage's Charm on the other side? Is it Murktide?
Yeah, it looks like I just see blue red. It's hard to tell, and we know there's no breach. So
Rhinos.
Rhinos. Okay.
So probably not an Archmage's Charm.
Any Yogg-Fathers in the mix? There's a couple test user. There's a couple running around. I haven't seen them in the feature match yet.
We've got a lot of Rhinos here in the tournament, so no surprise to see it in our feature match area a lot. That's definitely a deck that our players are going to have to contend with, and usually a pretty good deck against linear strategies, so Mill might be in a bit of a hurting.
All right, we're going to cut down to the match. Joshua Waddell here versus Logan Hilbert. Hilbert on Temur Rhinos, not opting for that white splash. We'll see if that helps him out here against the Crabs. Edron Crab, Ruin Crab.
That's a Ruin Crab, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's why I said both of them.
Yeah. There's a Catchery Triumph from Hilbert. I see some Cascade stuff in his hand.
All right, we got a mill for 3. Ruin Crab, effectively the same thing as Hedron Crab in this deck, but
what if we can mill all the Crashing Footfalls before turn 3?
that would be genius. What if we can mill 1 and then surgical them all?
Ooh, that's also nice.
Now, they're similar cards. Ruin Crab is an 0-3, but can only mill your opponents. Notably, doesn't die to Stomp, Dead Gone, things like that. Hedron Crab, an 0-2, can mill yourself, was very powerful in some of those mill strategies, or some of those self-mill strategies featuring like Vengevine and things back in the day. And it's interesting to see how things change. You know, Dredge used Hedron Crab for a long time in formats like Extended and early Modern.
Yeah, so Ruin Crab definitely the better of the two in this matchup with all that 2 damage removal from Hilbert. He's got 2 Dead Gone, 2 Prismaric Command, and 4 Fire Ice. Really just Brazen Borrow to bounce it and Fury. Try to answer that one, and I don't think there's a Fury coming, so this Ruin Crab's going to put in some work.
All right, well, Joshua Waddell just churning through Hilbert's deck using the Ruin Crab and a couple of those mill spells. We'll see if he has something like Tasha's Hideous Laughter here to get a huge chunk. You have to imagine it mills most of the deck, right? There's tons of zeros. Fury might be a hitch where it makes it a little bit harder, but something like Visions of Beyond here from Waddell could be backbreaking if the game ends up going a little bit longer.
Yeah, and that is a 4 of in his list, so definitely something we expect to see come up. We're going to have to try to keep a count of Hilbert's graveyard.
Here's a question. Does Mill even play Archive Trap anymore?
Oh yeah, there's 4 still.
It's one of those cards where, like, fetching against it is super awkward, but most decks just kind of have to do it. But sometimes you try to find, like, weird timing spots where you can fetch a second time in response and play, like, a 1-mana counterspell or whatever. I don't know. It's a really cool card.
Yeah, it's basically impossible to play around. You need to get your lands. You just kind of hope they don't have it when you fetch, and then once you see they don't have it, you try to fetch as quickly as possible.
Well, I did see a Crashing Footfalls hanging out over there, so if Waddell does find Surgical Extraction, can eliminate that part of the deck for Logan.
Yeah, but if he goes for it too quickly, we can Violent Outburst in response. Probably want to wait for that.
Yeah. All right, another Ruin Crab is going to trigger. A lot of alt art stuff from Waddell's side. Apologies. I just don't even know what some of these
are. That's a Shelldock Isle, I believe. There's one of Shelldock Isle. That's gotten less common in Mill these days, just because you don't want tapped lands, but a nice way to just kind of get a free spell.
All right, yeah. We're going to Violent Outburst in response to the Shelldock Isle trigger and the Ruin Crab trigger.
I guess wanted to avoid the disaster of milling over the last 3 Crashing Footfalls. But that is a Drown in the Lock, great at countering cards with no mana cost.
Yeah, doesn't even have to have anything in the graveyard because it costs 0.
Yeah. There's a lot of good counterplay from the mill deck here with Surgical Extraction and Drown in the Lock. So I wonder if this matchup is not as bad as I might have initially anticipated. Though there is a big haymaker from Logan Hilbert in this deck, and that is Endurance.
Yeah.
Endurance can target yourself.
Yeah. We'll
Tuck
see.
all those cards back in.
Yes. That's a cool part of Endurance, and he does have the main deck some number.
Only the one copy in the main, but has
One
3
is
more on the
gone.
sideboard. So we'll see.
Okay. Game 2 might be a little harder.
Did the Endurance get milled?
I saw it in the...
Oh,
yeah.
That's big.
Well, it's not going to be that hard for Waddell to win this game. There's no pressure from Hilbert. The Drown in the Lock saved him from a lot of the pressure. We were on the play with the Ruin Crab and just had a bunch of the answers, and also just has the draw 3 in hand.
I see some Force Negations in Hilbert's hand to stop some big mill cards, and he does have another Violent Outburst here, so going for that with no Drown in the Lock mana up for Waddell's. So that's going to give him the pressure. There's a Founding the Third Path off his Visions. Yeah, it's casual Ancestor Recall in Modern, you know.
I mean, it's got a lot of cost to it.
This is what, turn 4?
Sure.
Turn 3?
I mean, that's basically Treasure Cruise, right?
Yeah, that one's banned in Modern. They
That's true.
don't let you play with that one.
Yeah, but you can play Treasure Cruise in a number of blue decks. You can only play Visions of Beyond in a mill deck. Call that opportunity cost. Deck building restrictions. All right, this looks like this Footfall is going to resolve.
Very key for the Rhinos deck to get some pressure down. First one gets countered, second one comes through. I think Hilbert had a Force of Negation to potentially recounter the Drown, but wants to save that for more critical mill spells.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he didn't have the blue card to pitch to it. Maybe it's just 2 forces and no other blue cards.
Perhaps.
Now that he's drawn the second.
It looks like a bunch of lands on the stage in there.
I think you're right. I think it's a land-heavy hand.
Found another Ruin Crab.
Doing
the
a deck count. Wants to see if we can shell dock this turn.
Yeah.
Are you trying to follow along? Because I lost count.
I think it's exactly 20. My brain says it's exactly 20.
That would be convenient for Waddell.
Yeah. Well, we'll know in a second if he uses the shell dog.
Right.
Crabby.
I think we're going second crab before we play a land.
Easy to hit land drops when you play a draw 3 for 1 mana also.
Rhinos versus crabs, a classic battle.
Different universe we live in these days.
Dell really mulling over this turn. He's in the tank.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I guess these are just like coming to play tap lands. He's just trying to figure out sequencing. I think that Waddell's going to be able to win the game just with crabs before those Rhinos actually kill. It doesn't even have to do anything else really except play lands, I think.
Great comment from the chat. I think this is the first mill deck I've ever seen that isn't completely foiled out. Mill players are very committed.
That and taking turns players.
Yeah.
There was a taking turns player in Vegas a few years back. Triple sleeved.
Ooh, that Founding the Third Path, they should get exiled. So yeah, it looks like Hilbert didn't have the second blue card the previous turn, but draws another force. Decides to counter Founding the Third Path.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Waddell had a mill spell to cast off of it, so I think Waddell is pretty happy to see that one need a counter spell. And then Fatal Push hits a Rhino, so not a lot of pressure with only the 1/4/4 left. And Hilbert seems to be flooding.
Yeah, and Fire Ice not able to kill the Rune Crab because, again, it has 3 toughness. We were talking about that earlier. The Shelldock Isle has something under it, but a Beseiju targeting Shelldock Isle mills you for 6, which is about as bad as any of the spells it could be.
Yeah.
So I don't suspect Beseiju is going to target that anytime soon.
About as bad isn't as bad.
Yeah, that's true.
6 is less than 8 or 10 or Tasha's Hideous Laughter that'll probably take the rest of your deck.
Yeah. All right, we have a small judge call here. Just we're getting probably some clarification about a card, maybe a question about how things interact.
I think he might be asking if he can Beseiju in response to an activation.
Ooh, good question.
I would assume you would still get to cast a spell.
I assume you get to cast a spell as well, but I still think Beseijuing it would be a huge blunder just because you just get auto-milled for 6, and looks like the deck has under 20 cards in it now anyway, so 6 is basically half your life total remaining.
Maybe he just wants to feel something, Todd, you know?
That's fair.
He wants agency.
Go out on your own terms. I hate that term, agency. Like, someone who plays Lava Spike doesn't have agency. They chose to play Lava Spike. That's their agency.
That's them exercising their agency.
Yeah. They're just exercising it off the field in deck building and exercising it on your face. I think people just really like to feel smart.
Yeah.
Superiority complex.
Beseiju gets played as a land, so I don't think it's going to be...
He's got 2 Beseiju, I think.
Got 2 of them?
Oh, maybe not.
No.
Anyway, Goes for the ice. Probably going to tap down Shelldock, but might be tapping down a different land. What is that card underneath? Maybe it's a removal spell? It's hard to tell.
Yeah. Waddell's deck might not be foiled out, but it's definitely altered out.
Oh, yeah. Waddell is probably one of those guys that would normally be foiled out, but hates foils. Loves all the new alt art stuff. I'm a big fan of having alternate art stuff and cool looking stuff that's not foil. I just don't know them all.
I'm a big fan of cards looking exactly like I remember them looking 10 years ago.
You know, having old cards get new alternate art, not a big fan of.
This is a maddening cacophony unkicked, so this will get 8 cards.
I think this might be all of it.
And there's a second cacophony.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And is that 2 left?
And 6.
And then a land.
Crabs.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Grab.
Impressive stuff from Joshua Waddell. Handled that game really well. I think Hilbert flooded a little bit, but had multiple cascades into Rhinos, had a force negation.
Yep.
The big thing was that his removal just wasn't able to kill those ruined crabs.
Yeah, only 2 damage, you know? That's the big thing. Ruined Crab's actually pretty impressive if you think about it. Like,
I think that's a different game if those ruined crabs are hedron crabs.
Agreed.
Right, so taking a look at sideboards, starting with Joshua Waddell.
ISV says, is it mostly casters that don't enjoy alt art on cards? Probably. But I like to know what my opponents are playing too. Like, we've played a bunch of Magic in the last few years with a lot of the alt art stuff, and our opponents have them, and we get to read them. But, like, I can't leave the booth and go say, hey, is that a Darkslick Shores or a Marsh Flats? Like, I don't know.
Thunder asking why Cacophony instead of Glimpse the Unthinkable. It is 4 Cacophony, 2 Glimpse, so there are both. But the reason the split is more towards Cacophony is that it reduces your vulnerability to Leyline of Sanctity. Cacophony does not target, Glimpse it does.
All right.
So getting to it, Waddell's sideboard, we've got 2 Extirpate, 2 Flusterstorm, 1 Nile Spellbomb, 1 Soul Guide Lantern, 2 Spell Pierce, 1 Echoing Truth, 1 Hercule's Recall, 2 Crypt Incursion, 1 Ensnaring Bridge, and 2 Baleful Mastery. I like the bridge. Very good at stopping Rhinos. I like the Flusterstorms and Pierces. I like maybe 1 Extirpate, probably not. The sneaky card that I like is the Nile Spellbomb.
Yeah.
Because it can exile your Nile Spellbomb and Soul Guide Lantern. Because you can want to exile their graveyard to stop Endurance.
Right. Because the Endurances are definitely coming in, right?
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty good way for the Temur Rhinos deck to just kind of reset and undo all your hard work. And, you know, having an effect to exile the whole graveyard is a great way to keep that from being effective.
Yeah. Not usually a card you want against Temur Rhinos, but in this matchup specifically, it's sort of your best answer to Endurance. On Hilbert's side, we've got 1 Thrun the Last Troll, 2 Brotherhood's End, 3 more Endurance, 4 Mystical Dispute, 1 Chandra Awakened Inferno, and 4 Force of Vigor. Definitely like the Endurances. I like the Mystical Disputes. Maybe you need some number of Force of Vigors to deal with bridges, but you already have 1 Beseiju in the main. That's
and Borrowers too, right?
And Borrower. And you have 2 Prismari commands in the main too. So yeah, you probably don't need Force of Vigor with enough incidental artifact removal already. So I think just the Mystical Disputes and the Endurance is coming in on his side.
Makes sense. Both players here shuffling up. Done with sideboarding. We're preparing for game number 2. Joshua Waddell on your left took down game 1 in fiery fashion. You know, if you think about it, Mill is just smart guy burn.
Yeah.
It's just you just got to do more damage.
Yeah, but all your cards do more damage by themselves. You know,
deck damage.
Yeah, if you're milling 8 out of 53 because your opponent starts with with a 7-card hand usually. So 8 out of 53 is a little bit better than 1/7 of their life total. Which would be that's like 3 damage spell, yeah.
Tome Scour, you go. You know, it's really funny in Pioneer for a little while. Tome Scour was broken because with Underworld Breach, it just lets you mill your whole deck with like 1 card.
Yeah, I registered that card.
Silly goose. All right, both players here drawing up 7. Let's see if there's any mulligans or if we're going to be underway.
Hilbert going to be on the play here. I see, excuse me, I see a Borrower, I see a Force of Negation, see some lands. Not sure what the card next to the Force is. Well, it doesn't matter, sending it back. On Waddell's side, I see Oboro, I see an island.
House in the Cloud. That's a cool one with the crabs. If you miss your land drop, you can just tap itself to bounce itself and replay it.
Yep, just make sure you can keep triggering those landfalls. It's been a staple in this deck as a nice
Can we get a Boro on the
cost
screen?
singleton.
Boro, Palace in the Clouds. There's a There's a cycle of these from original Kamigawa. Aboro is one of my favorites because it does have a lot of weird uses. It reminds me a lot of Moloku the Clouded Mirror, which was one of my favorite threats back in the day. Aboro being able to bounce itself is similar vibes, and I don't know, the card's cool, and it's basically just an upgrade to an island if like you don't have basics matter type stuff.
Oh, there are Field of Ruins in Waddell's deck. That's a staple of these decks because they want to force the opponent to shuffle or search their library so they can get the archive trap online. So
The force are just nice. Nice.
also helps your landfall numbers with the crabs. So
Oh, that's true.
there is a reason to have basics in this deck, and Waddell does play 5. He's got 4 islands and a swamp. So healthy number of basics. You got room for one Oboro.
Yeah, but we see plenty of decks in Standard and Pioneer and even Modern play those newer Kamigawa Neon Dynasty channel lands, right? And they kind of just replace some of those basics that would be there.
See a lot of
Similar-
removal
similar
in
thing.
Hilbert's second hand here. We got a Dead Gaunt and 2 copies of Fire Ice. So really hoping there's some Hedron crabs on Waddell's side if he keeps this one.
Yeah.
And from Waddell, I see the extra. So the extra pates came in. I think he's trying to mill at Crashing Footfalls and just answer them that way, in addition to having counterspells for them. Or maybe just decides he doesn't want the Pierces and Flusterstorms. He'd rather be proactive.
Interesting enough, the
So you can also get the Endurances that way too. You mill one and get him out of here. So it makes sense. I can buy it.
there are a lot of counterspells on the Temur Rhinos side of things after Sideboard, and Extirpate having split second could be a huge deal. Logan might be like, oh, I can let this one mill spell resolve and I'll counter some big thing later down the line. But then all of a sudden, one of your Crashing Footfalls in the graveyard, the Extirpate takes it, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Hilbert, it's another Ruin Crab on turn 1 for Waddell, so this 2 damage removal is going to look pretty weak for a second game in a row. I think we're going to see these ices get cast on lands.
Yeah, I think so too. That'll slow Waddell down a little bit while Herbert maybe finds an answer, maybe finds some Crashing Footfalls.
The one good thing, though, is Hilbert has had non-fetch lands, but all 3 colors of mana still might be able to dodge the archive trap that Waddell drew on his first turn. But if there's a fetch here, there's another Cascade card. I don't think Hilbert has a 3rd land.
I don't either. I was curious if Waddell was going to go for a Mystical Dispute. I think he's got one in hand. Could have hit the ice to like stifle the draw, but maybe just valuing it more highly for winning a Counterspell War against Force Negation.
There's an Endurance off the top in the graveyard. And Waddell does have Extirpate, so could take out the Endurances if he chooses next turn. He's got access to that black mana. And
Crashing Footfalls gets suspended.
not the draw Hilbert was hoping for. Misses his 3rd land drop this game. And yeah, it's not looking good for the Rhinos player. I believe that is a Fractured Sanity off the top for Joshua Waddell. It is. He just chooses to cycle it.
Yeah,
So this is going to mill 4.
cycling it because I don't think Waddell has another land drop to hit, and a land drop is very important for these Rune Crabs and Hedron Crabs.
Yeah, both players missing land drops, so maybe Hilbert will have time to get back into this game. Come on. Attack with the crab, please. Gotta send a message.
Brazen
Send a
Bar,
message.
Brazen Bar, the pickup from Hilbert. Not that exciting right now.
You know,
Looking to go for another ice here.
if you're truly going to be, weird burn guy, you got to be aggressive. Got those crabs in there. And interesting, Hilbert chooses to wait until Waddell's turn to cast this ice to try to limit his mana, but also by doing so ensures that he won't make a 3rd land drop until potentially the next turn.
All right, he's thumbing that extra pay. We'll see if he wants to fire it off on the Footfalls or the Endurance. I kind of like hitting the Endurance, honestly, because you have a Footfalls off to the side. You have Endurances that can save you later in the game.
I completely agree.
And it has split second. He agrees he's going to go for the Endurances, and that's going to take away his ability to reshuffle. And now you got a straight up game.
Gotta show your hand here. So we got 2 Violent Outbursts, Brazen Borrower, Dispute, and Dead Gone in the hand for Hilbert.
Now, notably, Ice is still on the stack. Waddell does have Mystical Dispute in hand. Still has the option to stifle the draw to potentially slow down Hilbert, since Mystical Dispute here does not counter the Crashing Footfalls off of the Cascade effects. Might be worthwhile. Also still has a draw step. This is still on Waddell's upkeep. Looking through the deck to see if there's any cool sideboard stuff. Getting a count on Mystical Disputes and Blood Moons and things of that nature.
Blood Moon's a sneaky good card in this matchup. There's a lot of non-basics, and messing with their mana can be an easy way to stop them from casting a lot of their spells and really slow them down. Also stops fetch lands to get double landfall for crabs.
Yep. And the deck just has like a lot of split colored costs, right? There's a bunch of 1 mana black spells. There's a bunch of 2 blue spells. And so Blood Moon, essentially, even if it's not backbreaking, what it does is it makes it so your opponent can only play 1 spell a turn, essentially.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind here, even though Hilbert's library was searched, it was searched by Waddell, so that does not meet the criteria for Archive Trap.
Ooh, interesting. That makes sense. Let's see if Waddell burns the Mystical Dispute. Decides not to. Hilbert finds the land.
Unfortunately for him, it's a fetch land, so that Archive Trap is likely going to be turned on pretty soon.
It's just 13 damage.
Oh. Waddell chooses to run out the Hedron Crab there to be mana efficient, but doesn't have the land drop to make it, and Hilbert has an answer, though if you're Hilbert, this is the turn you want to be casting Violent Outburst.
Right.
But maybe with the Crashing Footfalls and Suspend, you'd rather be disruptive. He decides to be disruptive. Hold up the Dispute, deal with the Crab. I like that. I think with the Footfalls over there, and your opponent missing land drops, like, you don't need to be as gung-ho about putting pressure on the battlefield.
Can also fetch and Mystical Dispute the Archive Trap.
There's a Maddening Cacophony that meets the Dispute.
All right, Hilbert's Sway. Footfalls goes to 1. Can cast. Oh, found a Fury. Probably going to go Outburst and Fury this turn. That's going to be a heater of a turn.
Yeah. And draws another land, but it's another Wooded Foothills. I think Hilbert keenly aware of the potential of Archive Trap, but at this point, you got to be able to cast your spells.
All right, we're fetching.
You got to let him search. You can't respond to the fetch.
Yep, so we're going to do them one at a time.
Yeah, let one resolve.
All right, so just clear communication between the players, just so they all know what's going on. The first one's going to resolve, and then the second one's on the stack, and you can Archive Trap then.
Yeah, and potentially take away all of the lands that they'd be able to fetch for.
Yep.
So that is good timing from Waddell. Yeah, Hilbert getting a basic here because wants to potentially cast Blood Moon if he draws it.
Okay, and now we do have to shuffle before the second one resolves because of this Archive Trap.
Yeah.
Is that a second Archive Trap in hand? All right, it is. So we're going to mill 26 cards, but first we get to resolve the Outburst somewhere between.
Well, first Archive Trap is going to resolve. Then we're going to resolve Cascade Trigger. Then we'll resolve Violent Outburst. Then we'll resolve second Archive Trap. Then we'll resolve the second Wooded Foothills.
A lot of sticky, timing issues.
So this is the Cascade reveal. These cards are going to end up on the bottom.
Yeah.
Do we even have... I don't think we've seen all 4 yet.
Yeah, we have 2 left. He was trying to mill them in response, right?
Yeah. I would not be surprised if there are no fetchables left after this, with 26 cards leaving the library.
Yeah.
And I don't think we saw any in those Cascade reveals, which is really bad for Hilbert, because those are the cards that are definitely not going to get milled.
All right, so now we peel 13 off the top, and then we finish resolving the original fetch lands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8.
Yeah, there's a lot of the fetchables gone.
And there is what is likely the last Crashing Footfalls. I believe one was already milled, one was cast, one was suspended, and now another one is milled.
Now the Wooded Foothills. Yep.
Yep.
Is there anything left? Okay, we got a Steam Vents.
All right.
I think there was the last one.
26 dex damage. Here we go.
And yeah, pretty thin deck over there for Hilbert, but does have quite a bit of pressure, so could be able to end this game in 2 turns.
How do you beat milled? How do you do it?
Yeah, now we get the Fury on the Crab. Well, I don't know how many cards left Waddell has that are castable.
All right, draw from Waddell. Let's see. He has looks like a Fatal Push for one of the Rhinos. That's going to buy him a ton of time. Doesn't look
there's
like
2
he has
more
a
Rhinos
land,
coming next turn, so that's, well, like 15-ish?
Well, so if he pushes one of the creatures here, though. Okay, Tasha's Hideous Laughter. That might do it. That might be all she wrote.
3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21.
What, 2 cards left? 3 cards left, something?
Those are exiled.
All right.
Let's make more Rhinos. So now, because we had to tap out for the Hideous Laughter, Fatal Push isn't going to prevent this being a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, but might have another.
It's like 3 cards. I think there's 2 left after the draw.
Okay.
Because I see at least 2 cards there.
All right. We need no force negation, and we need a lot of deck damage. Just any deck damage.
So Waddell should be at 9 for that attack. Yep.
That's founding. Is there a 1-mana thing in the graveyard? What if Waddell's able to figure out? Oh, there's 3 cards left. I was gonna say, what if they're? Oh, they could just.
Oh yeah, this is chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Chapter 2, bro.
Chapter dos.
I'm gonna read ahead, and the ending is you're dead.
Here we go. It took us until the very last turn, but we got to see Founding the Third Path do something.
Yeah, that's what you wanted the whole time, right? You just wanted to see Founding a Third Path, right?
Oh
no. So we can play an instant or sorcery that costs 2, right? Chapter 1. The ability's still in the stack.
Yeah. But do we have anything relevant there? Fatal Push.
I don't know.
Fatal Push isn't going to be good. Not sure why they're.
Maybe he thought read ahead, you just like it sticks on 1 and then you choose to read ahead to chapter 2. I'm actually not sure how the card is templated.
Can we get Founding the Third Path on the screen?
So read ahead is a newer ability. It says choose a chapter and start with that many lore counters. Add 1 after your draw step, skip chapters, don't trigger, sacrifice after 3. So there was a 1 put on it. So if Waddell made a mistake and put a 1 on it, may have said, I'll do chapter 2, may have said, I'm going to read ahead to chapter 2. You know, I don't know what was communicated.
Yeah, how he communicated this is key. Well, like, you know, if he communicated something and demonstrated that was his intent, the fact that he put a 1 doesn't really matter.
Right.
If he didn't communicate anything and just put a 1, that communicates his intent.
As long as he said read ahead, milli 4, or something similar, the game should be over. And Logan here just, you know, making sure that everything's on the up and up because it's a new ability. It's a weird card. Just wants clarification. And if Waddell could have stepped in it, right? Could have said the wrong thing. Could have accidentally just not said anything. Put it on 1.
The judge just put 2 counters on it. I'm guessing he communicated this effectively.
All right. Well, we'll get this cleared up in just a second. The judge is standing over the table. Once that happens, we'll get the answer and we'll know if there's going to be a game 3 or not. My guess, Logan's dead. And there it is.
Yep.
All right. GG. Joshua Waddell puts it down 2-0. And yeah, Waddell with Mill 3-0. That's pretty cool.
And that was impressive. Rhinos is normally very good against linear strategies with their cheap disruption and fast clock. But you know, Mill had a lot of good counterplay. I think that, you know, we talked about Rune Crab, and that being an 0-3 was really important. And, you know, his own counter spells and removal, the extirpate on the endurance was big. Really, really good stuff here. And as I said earlier, Rhinos is very popular. So if you can roll through a lot of those Rhinos players, you might be having a long day here.